Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. I would like to welcome Sonia Lheureux, the Library of Parliament librarian, Marianne Scott, Emeritus National Librarian and President of the Friends. I believe I've seen Norm Barwin as well, from the Lowy Library Group. Yes, Norm is here. I know I'm forgetting many people, volunteers, employees, etc. Thank you to all of you for being here today.
Welcome to LAC Presents, the second in a series of presentations by LAC's experts in their fields. I'm especially proud of this series because it gives the organization a chance to showcase some of the talented people who work at LAC. Some of you may remember, and if you don't, you're in deep trouble. Remember that I took 4 commitments when I arrived at LAC 21 months ago. And one of them was that LAC be an institution at the leading edge of archival and library sciences. And Michael Smith is one of these talented people who allows LAC to really be at the leading edge. Last year, Michael was nominated for the prestigious W.K. Lamb Special Achievement Award. And because of Michael's creativity, passion, and dedication, one of Canada's most significant historical documents has been released from a sealed vault and allowed to see the light of day, literally. Working in close cooperation with the Canadian Conservation Institute, Michael Smith has ensured that the Proclamation of the Constitution Act, with its original signatures and even a few raindrops, has been made accessible to Canadians. Without compromising its long-term preservation and with the guarantee that future generations will also be able to enjoy this national treasure for years to come. I look forward to hearing Michael's presentation today, and I'm sure it will be fascinating. I'd also like to give a special shout out and thank you to the Canadian Conservation Institute, and especially Eric Hogan. Through their research, advice, and help with the designs and drawings, Eric and his team saved LAC thousands of dollars. The Constitution has already been viewed by thousands of visitors at the Canadian Museum of Human Rights. Having developed cases that respect preservation, security, and access, we can ensure that safe travels of other pivotal documents from Canadian history as well, making them accessible to Canadians who might not otherwise have had the chance to see them. So I'd like now to welcome Michael Smith, who will provide us with the details of this landmark innovation.
Thank you very much, Mr. Berthiaume. And it's a pleasure to be here today and see so many friends and colleagues in the audience. And I'm very excited to share with you today a recent project that I worked on that I think is important to not only LAC, but all Canadians. So I'll begin with a bit of background. Other countries have invested a lot of money into the design and fabrication of state-of-the-art custom-built enclosures for their national treasures. Now, Library and Archives Canada can proudly announce our own brand new custom-built storage cases and display case for what are two of the country's most important constitutional documents, both copies of the Proclamation of the Constitution Act. So here's where it all began. On April 17th, 1982, the Proclamation of the Constitution Act was signed by the Queen on a rainy day on Parliament Hill. These are two of the most important constitutional documents in Canada, and what they did was finally transfer all legislative authority in Canada, including the power to make changes to our Constitution without first seeking approval from the British government. These documents symbolize Canada's journey from colony to independent nation. LAC holds these 2 original versions of the Proclamation of the Constitution in our collection. One copy was signed during the ceremony and suffered water damage. This copy is unofficially referred to as the raindrop copy. The other was signed privately and suffered intentional damage. This copy is unofficially referred to as the red paint or red stain version. Studies conducted in 2012 by the Canadian Conservation Institute, CCI, concluded that the signature inks used on both copies of these documents are extremely light sensitive. This new information, coupled with an increasing demand for the long-term display and loan of these objects compelled LAC's Preventive Care and Maintenance section to work closely with the Conservation Treatment section, as well as the Canadian Conservation Institute, to create specifications for a preservation storage case with all the features necessary to protect these important documents. In 1983, 24-year-old Peter Grayson entered this very building posing as an art student doing research on the design and calligraphy of the Proclamation of the Constitution. James Whalen, then archivist and custodian for this document, was notified of the request and met with Grayson. As James Whalen later wrote, as the well-dressed and polite art student had properly identified himself and appeared to be a legitimate researcher, I had no reason not to trust him and retrieved the proclamation from storage. I then took it to room 701 and carefully laid it out on a flat surface for viewing. Grayson asked to be left alone with the document, but I refused this request. Grayson began leaning over the document, and all of a sudden there was a pool, a red substance, spreading out over the document. The liquid appeared to come from inside Grayson's suit pocket. Later, it was found to be red paint that came from an Elmer Safety's glue bottle that Grayson had hidden in his suit coat pocket. In court, Grayson testified that he was protesting against Prime Minister Pierre Trudeau's decision made just a week earlier, allowing the United States to test cruise missiles over Canadian airspace. Grayson believed this was a flagrant violation of his rights under the new Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms. So what happened next? The conservation labs, which were fortunately located in this building at the time, went into immediate action. They started by attempting to remove as much paint as possible using suction to draw the paint away. However, the nature of the paper, which was hand-laid Manitoba flax, meant that it quickly absorbed the paint and became permanently stained. Over the next few months, many different tests were carried out, including laser removal, but all proved to be inadequate. Eventually, the question arose as to whether the document should be replaced or kept as is, since the vandalism had become part of the history of the document. In the end, the decision was made to leave the stain. This incident had long-term effects on access and security procedures for prestigious documents, and also factored into the design of both the preservation and display cases that I'm going to be discussing today. And as a side note, microfade testing by CCI has shown that the signatures located beneath the red stain are actually fading at a slower rate than those on the raindrop copy, so perhaps something good did come out of all that. So having seen that other countries such as the United States had made serious investments in the design and fabrication of state-of-the-art custom enclosures for many of their prestigious documents and cultural treasures, the question arose, why had Canada not yet invested the same kind of money in a long-term preservation housing for what were arguably two of the country's most important constitutional documents, both copies of the Proclamation of the Constitution? And here in this picture, you can see a photo of an enclosure built by the Library of Congress that holds the Gettysburg Address. The project officially began in 2013, and it was determined that the deliverables for this project would be the construction of 2 preservation storage cases built to meet the specifications provided to the supplier by LAC. Some of these specifications were: the cases needed to be airtight and include UV filtering anti-reflective glass. The case components needed to be machined from solid blocks of aluminum to minimize leaks, and then anodized black to protect against corrosion and wear. The cases needed to be delivered to LAC before March 2014 in order to accommodate an upcoming loan of the raindrop version to the Canadian Museum of Human Rights in Winnipeg. The cases needed to be built locally in order to save on time and transportation, and most importantly, we wanted these cases to be Canadian-made. Here in this photo, you can see a picture of the unfinished case on the left before it was anodized, and then the completed one on the bottom right. And in case anyone's interested, each case weighs about 100 pounds. After reviewing close to a decade of previous research that had been done at LAC on case specifications for these documents, I decided that it made sense to segregate the preservation specifications from the majority of the security requirements. This decision would lead to the creation of 2 separate projects, one for the preservation cases and one for the display case. The rationale for this decision was that it did not make sense to invest in something like bulletproof glass, for example, in the storage case, since it would be located in a secure vault the majority of time. Instead, the storage case mainly addresses preservation concerns, and while on display, seamlessly fits inside the display case, which addresses the bulk of the security requirements. Drawing inspiration from the custom cases built by other institutions, I began what would become a key collaboration with Eric Hagen, a brilliant conservation scientist at the Canadian Conservation Institute. Eric closely studied existing designs from the Getty Conservation Institute and the National Institute of Standards and Technology in the United States, and then determined how we could replicate these with our modest budget and tight timelines. CCI played a pivotal role in conducting research, contributing advice, and helping develop designs and shop drawings for the contractor, thereby saving LAC thousands of dollars. CCI was also involved in helping to design custom magnetic clips that hold the documents in place, which I'll explain a little bit later. So this slide gives you a bit of an idea of how the case fits together. In the image on the top right, you can see how the outer support plate nests inside the cavity of the case bottom, which is shown on the left. And it also allows for silica gel and other desiccants to be placed beneath the document to control local humidity. The bottom right-hand image shows the inner support plate. The inner plate, or the document support plate, is anchored to the tray and is the component that the documents are attached to. The inner support plate has strategically located magnets where the document clips are located to hold it in place. It also helps give the impression that the document is floating against a black background. So in this slide, you can see the packets of preconditioned silica gel, which are resting in the cavity on the bottom of the case. These packets are held in place with mylar strips, and silica gel, as I mentioned, acts as a desiccant to control local humidity inside the case. The cavity on the opposite side holds a strip of activated charcoal cloth, and activated charcoal absorbs any airborne pollutants. So this is one of my favorite features. The case is fitted with a partially inflated bag made from heat-sealed Marvel Seal material. Marvel Seal is an aluminized polyethylene and nylon barrier film. The bag is connected to a small hole situated underneath the case, which is purposely left open. This safety feature allows the bag to change size to accommodate changes in atmospheric pressure and subsequently the volume inside the case, so that the glass is not stressed or possibly fractured. The document clips were developed in consultation with CCI and LAC's Prints and Drawings conservator, Anne Mayhew. These custom metal clips are painted to camouflage their appearance and are hardly visible unless you know where to look. They each have a mylar sleeve that fits over the edge of the document to protect it from contact with the metal. The bottom of the clip rests in a small gap beneath the support plate and is held in place with a magnet. We experimented with different shapes for the mylar tabs, such as semicircles and the longer ones, but in the end, we went with the semicircle shape as it provided a more secure fit than other shapes. Both cases are designed to accommodate an anoxic environment should LAC decide to pursue this at a later date. Anoxic refers to low oxygen and involves using valves to flush out the oxygen inside the sealed case and then replace it with an inert gas, which is most of the time nitrogen. Because oxygen speeds up the deterioration of organic materials such as paper, anoxic environments provide a good option for slowing deterioration and adding to the long-term preservation of material. And CCI has also done some tests on ink fading in an anoxic environment, and the results support this idea. As a point of interest, the Library of Congress currently has anoxic cases for 5 of its library treasures and 2 rare maps. And in fact, anoxic storage is a requirement for all Library of Congress collection items of significant cultural heritage. The 2 storage cases are carefully designed to fit seamlessly into the secure display case, which I'm going to discuss next. In this image, you can see that the case design also includes removable handles to facilitate installing and removing the lid, as well as removable feet so that the components beneath the case are protected from damage. So, we had a new system to safely house and protect the Proclamation of the Constitution Act documents. The question now was, how were we going to safely display them? LAC contracted a company based in Quebec City that specializes in museum-grade and conservation-grade high-quality display cases to design and fabricate a display case for our specifications. LAC's requirements were: the case must meet all of our security requirements, it must be transportable to venues across the country, and it must be compatible with the 2 new preservation cases. The display case was designed to showcase the document without upstaging it, and is neutral enough to work aesthetically in various gallery settings and exhibition spaces. It's constructed from black powder-coated steel with a glass top. Both the storage case and the display case incorporate multiple layers of glass. Each layer serves to protect the document in a different way. First, we have the preservation case containing the document. This case uses OptiView anti-reflective glass, which provides anti-glare properties and UV protection from light. And here you can see the LED lighting that is inside the display case. Next, we have the layers of glass that make up the display case. The display case features a layer of security glass to protect the document from any kind of forced entry. It has a top layer of regular glass, which can be easily replaced and serves to protect the more valuable glass underneath from scratches. And finally, there's a layer of VariGuard or smart glass. This is the layer that serves to protect the document from excess light exposure while on display. This may sound like a lot of glass, but in reality, the visibility is not compromised. And in fact, at the Canadian Museum of Human Rights in Winnipeg, the display case is actually located behind a glass vitrine, which adds a 5th layer of glass. But even with this, the document is still easily viewable. So I'm by no means an expert in smart glass or VariGuard, but here's a brief overview about how it works. By default, the glass is opaque and protects the document from 97% of visible light and 99% of UV light. An electrical current excites molecules sandwiched between the layers of glass, causing them to either disperse or come together. When a button is pressed, the glass becomes clear and the document is visible. And after a set amount of time, the glass reverts back to its opaque state. And there's a lot of videos. If you're really interested in it, you can go onto YouTube and type in smart glass, and you can actually see it in action. And it's also used quite a bit in the architecture field as well. Because light exposure is a key concern, a counter tracks the cumulative exposure every time the display case button is pressed. A timer inside the case controls how long the document is visible each time the button is activated. An elapsed time indicator adds up the exposure time and allows LAC to monitor the total light exposure during an exhibition. Staff at the Borrowing Institution provide LAC with weekly readings from this counter. And once they reach a maximum number of agreed-to light cycles, the document's removed from display and returned to LAC. So this project did not come without challenges. A few of them were reading through the large volume of previous research already done on the topic. The timeline was very tight for a project that required consultation with a great many stakeholders. And of course, it was a huge challenge accomplishing the design specifications while also minimizing the associated cost. And as I mentioned earlier, the finished product incorporated simplified elements from related work at the Getty Conservation Institute, as well as the National Institute of Standards and Technology. The storage cases and the display case each represent one half of a 2-part system. Together, they provide the necessary preservation, display, and security requirements to protect 2 of Canada's most important documents. The success of this project has opened doors to the possibility of creating more custom preservation cases for LAC treasures and hopefully continued collaboration with the Canadian Conservation Institute. And for those of you who wish to see the document firsthand, the raindrop copy is currently on display as part of the Protecting Rights in Canada exhibit at the Canadian Museum for Human Rights in Winnipeg, and LAC is working on having one of the 2 copies on display here in Ottawa in time for the Canada 150 celebrations. In conclusion, I could not have done it without the following people, and I would like to sincerely thank Eric Hagan, Anne Mayhew, Lisa Hennessy, Jamie Laux, Kevin Fitzgerald, and Luc Foyer. Thank you very much.